Okay.
Happy days. Good morning, Jim. How are you keeping? Jim is normally on the ball. If we put down a live stream, Jim's normally there, chilled out. How are you keeping, Jim O'Neill? Jim, can you hear us there? Can you? I never asked her how are you keeping, Melissa? How are you
I'm all
feeling
right.
today?
I'm all right. Incredibly busy this week. Lots of talks because it's the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birthday quite soon. And, I make a lot of Regency clothing. I
Mm.
just have talk after talk after talk in the next 9 days, flitting all over the country. I'm off to Longford tomorrow, then Leitrim the next day, Cavan, Carrick-on-Shore, Dublin, Cork. So, and all of it via public transport. So yeah, it's going to be busy, but sure, look, we'll have Christmas to rest. So
Perfect, perfect. And Dennis, can you hear Melissa as well? You can hear me fine. That's the main thing. Good afternoon. No, the creative Contessa, she actually is exhausted. She was up last night. I think it was, God, she was getting ready for a charity, and she's been up late for the last 2 days or so, getting ready for that and stuff. And we were talking last night, and she said she just did not have the energy to get up at 5 a.m. to do this talk this morning. And I was like, that's perfectly grand, Rachel. But
understandable.
I didn't actually say it to Melissa. Yeah, and it probably is rude to ask her actually straight on a live stream and stuff. But she was asking if people are wondering from because some of Creator Contessa's fans are in the live stream now, and they're just asking how she is and stuff. But
Mhm.
she was asking if we could do this again on a weekend or something when she's not hectic all over the place. I would
Yeah,
love to have Melissa Shields back on again, and I know for a fact Creative Contessa's fans would love to have
yeah.
Melissa on again, because of the fact that Rachel specializes in 15th century clothing. And recently, Melissa has been getting into Irish 15th century clothing, especially to do with the Desmond Fitzgeralds, because of the fact she's a huge Wars of the Roses fan. So she's
Mm.
been getting into that stuff. And then when I told her that I wanted to get Mel onto my channel to do a live stream sometime to talk about Anglo-Irish clothing and Gaelic clothing, Rachel went, she looked you up and researched, and she was very excited about that actually. Um, what was it called? But then when she ends up last night, she was really exhausted. And I was like, just relax and stuff. We could easily, I'm sure Melissa would love to jump back onto the channel sometime,
Yeah,
and
not a
definitely,
bother.
yeah, and definitely have that deeper conversation because Rachel is way more qualified to talk about clothing than I am. I'm more into the family side of things, the politics, and all that stuff. And that's actually where I know Melissa from, Dr. Melissa Shields from, is actually from University College of Cork. When the two of us would be in the back, and it was myself, yourself, and another friend of ours, and we used to talk about the Fitzgerald family like all the time. And I remember one time when we were in the back, and he was I can't remember specifically what it was. It was something to do about the Fitzgeralds, and he was like, "No, no, no, the Fitzgeralds did A, B, and C," and the two of us were like, "No, they didn't. Like, stop." It was something on that
Is that
lines.
Brian? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Brian you're talking
yeah,
about? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh dear. Sometimes I just be tuning out,
yeah.
So yeah. In the good old mature student tea room in UCC, which is no more.
Is it
So
gone
yeah.
now? Jesus.
Oh yeah, it's gone. They built a new humongous center called the Hub. Sure, do you
Oh,
remember how like UCC was under construction the whole time we were there? It's because they were building that new student center. So
mm.
the mature student tea room is gone. It's a thing of the past. So
Oh. I have. Would it annoy you now if we talk about Victorian era clothing? Because some of the people are asking
sure.
about what Victorian clothing. Because they're in the comment section there. It's actually a few of
Yeah.
Rachel's friends are asking what Victorian clothing do you do specifically? Because they're actually really big into Victorian style clothing.
Yeah. Perfect. I am actually going to be wearing some tomorrow night and Wednesday night
Mm.
for my talk on Victorian Christmas traditions. So I specifically do the American Civil War
Oh.
because I'm part of a reenactment group called the Pards, which
Mm.
is based in Cork in Ireland. And we basically showcase the experience of Irish soldiers who enlisted both in the North and the South in the Union and the Confederacy. So I have made quite a bit of clothing from 1861 to 1865. So I've got what I would kind of call a sort of a middle class wardrobe that
Mm.
I've made. And I give talks on, like I say, I'm doing one tomorrow night and Wednesday night on Victorian Christmas traditions. But I've also I basically have a talk that I go to big country estates and I give a talk called A Day in the Life of. And either I give a talk on the day in the life of a Georgian lady,
Mm.
a Regency lady, or a Victorian lady. And I go through the clothing changes throughout the day. So I start off in basically the undergarments, wearing a wrapper or some sort of morning gown, whatever to wear first thing in the morning while getting ready. I go through the hair and beauty routines. And then I put on the first outfit of the day, and then I either describe or demonstrate the activities that women performed while wearing that type of clothing. And then usually I change into another type of clothing, whether that is evening wear or some sort of active wear, like usually a riding habit.
Mm.
I've got a 1780s riding habit and an 1860s riding habit. And in January, my project is to make an 18 teens riding habit. And then usually like I say, I finish the talk either with a talk on ballroom etiquette or tea etiquette of the period. So my Victorian clothing is very limited to a very specific 4-year period, but that's simply because it overlaps with the reenactment that I do. And I live in a very small house, so I can't make clothing from absolutely every period of history. It's bad enough I've made clothing from a 1,000-year period of history. I like to say I do everything from Viking to Victorian. So that's a lot of clothing.
I can imagine.
And I do live in a quite small house. So,
Oh God, tell me about that. I'm the same here
oh yeah,
up in
probably not by
Japan.
Japanese
I
standards.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But anyway, regardless, the comment section now is asking, is it very uncomfortable? Is your clothing very uncomfortable to wear? No?
Nope. Not at all. I quite like corsetry. I make all my own clothing. I hand stitch all of it.
Mm,
I only allow myself to use a sewing machine if I'm
absolutely.
making anything in the 1860s, because by then the sewing machine had been invented. But even then, actually, with over, 23 years of sewing now, I'm very fast at hand sewing.
Mm.
I recently knocked out a late 1790s Regency round gown in 2.5 days, entirely
Oh,
sewn by hand.
wow.
So it doesn't actually take that long. And I make all the layers, so including the corsetry layers, the support garments myself.
Mm.
So when you make something to your own measurements and you can try it on several times while you're making it, you can make it fit yourself. Now, if I laced myself too tightly into something, yes, it would hurt.
Oh.
And sometimes you're willing to put up with a bit of pain if you want your waist to look particularly snatched. But most of the time, it's no different than if you went to a red carpet event nowadays, or like, a big office party or something like that, or a wedding, and you want to look really good. You're willing to put up with a bit of pain, like wearing Spanx and all that sort of thing, and really high-heeled shoes to look amazing for an evening, but you're not necessarily torturing yourself every single day. So no, I find the clothing very comfortable. And to not go on too much of a tangent, but back in August, I pulled something in my lower back. I don't
Oh.
know how, but I did. And it was literally 2 days before my busiest week of the year, which is Heritage Week in Ireland. And I had events all over the country, much like I do next week, that I am taking trains and buses for all across the country. And I was like, how am I going to do this? Hauling heavy suitcases, and I can't move. Like, I had to use a cane to get into the toilet. I was in so much pain.
Mm.
And you know what I did? I slapped on my Victorian corset, and the back support of it was magnificent,
Really?
and just that like counter pressure against the whatever was bulging in my back that hurt, that counter pressure just saved my life. And because I was wearing my Tudor kirtle or my Elizabethan kirtle and my Regency stays several days in a row, by the end of about 3 days, my back just eased out and I was grand and I was able to do everything. So actually, I find the corsetry life saving.
Definitely sounds like it when you're in that sort of situation, for sure.
Mm.
So okay, just stepping back to our what our original broadcast is meant to be about. So let me get this right. Would you prefer to make, because it seems like it's much more easier, would you rather make a Victorian clothing or 16th century Tudor Irish clothing? Because it seems like by, the fact you can use a machine and how complicated a Tudor Irish clothing is, you'd prefer to do a Victorian clothing. Would I be wrong in saying that, or?
I wouldn't say that I prefer to do that.
Mm.
It's whatever I'm in the mood for at the moment.
Ah,
Like I like to start the year with a big project. I like to have a big project lined up for January because it's such a long, tedious month
mm,
that I find that if I can hyperfixate on a big project, I can get through that month and I'm not pulling my hair out by the end of it. So, for instance, this January of 2025, I made a 1570s Elizabethan gown, which I think I sent you a picture of. It's my
yes.
black taffeta gown with the 37 meters of silver trim on it and 300 spangles. It's my
Mm, mm,
habit for a talk that I did in July on hunting lodges and kind of hunting practices in Ireland at that period.
mm,
So I can't really say that I prefer to make one more than the other. It's just whatever mood takes me. And fortunately, I've such a wardrobe now that I
mm,
rarely have to make a new thing for a talk. I can make a new thing because I want to. I want a new thing. And I can kind of order my schedule in such a way that I can make what I feel like making.
mm.
So if I'm in the mood to make a riding habit, then I'm all guns blazing and I'm going to make that riding habit. But if you suddenly told me, well, no, actually, you need to make something Victorian because something else came up, I might find that a bit off putting because in my brain, I'm just all riding habit, riding habit, riding habit. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
So I don't, I like sewing. I'll just say that I like sewing. I
mm,
actually enjoy it.
mm,
So for me to sew is not, that's not a problem.
mm,
It's
mm.
not torture. You might remember, Phil, like I was always I would be sewing in the tea room.
Yeah.
I sometimes had my inkle loom with me and I would be working on a Viking braid,
Mm,
weaving a braid, So for me, I just enjoy textiles and handicrafts.
mm.
So it's not a big deal to me to take on a long project.
Okay. Just in the comment section there. Okay. We have a bit of a nightmare situation there. So just to
There.
explain to everyone back at home, for some strange reason, Dr. Melissa Shields, her audio is being blocked by the Restream app. So I just want to apologize to everyone at home. So when we switch over to the photos, it's blocking her app. We're actually not sure what the problem is. What we
Oh,
could do, we've already been asked. So this morning we'll obviously have a nice little conversation and stuff, mostly focused on 16th century Irish clothing. So if you have any questions on that whatsoever to do with either the Anglo-Saxon, what was it? Ugh. No, I did not say that. The
not
Anglo-Irish.
Anglo-Saxon.
No, right? I didn't say anything, I swear. Either on Anglo-Irish clothing or on Gaelic clothing, please ask away in the comments section. And what we could do, because Melissa Shields is up for it again, is we could I fixed it because it's my problem to fix. I will try and fix the problem with Melissa Shields. We can have Melissa Shields on again with Rachel this time, who specializes in 15th century clothing. Um, Rachel specifically specializes in Florentine clothing of the 15th century, but recently she has gotten into Anglo-Irish clothing and Gaelic clothing. And of course, she was very disappointed today. She was very exhausted last night, so we couldn't have her on this morning because she'd have to get up at 5 in the morning, and she was already up very, very late getting ready for I think it's a fair or something she was doing. And I just told her, look, it doesn't matter. I can ask Melissa. And Melissa said there she's up for jumping on again. So we'll just have to organize a date and stuff for that. So I do apologize today for not being able to get those photos up, because the photos that Melissa Shields has sent to me is absolutely gorgeous photos. So it is a massive pity, and I do apologize for that. Just jumping back into the comments section there, a corset does help for a bad back. Yeah, I definitely agree. So would you have a corset in the 16th century, or is there an evolution path there from the 16th century over to the 19th century?
Yes, so in the 16th century, the support garment was called the kirtle. So it was essentially like a corset with skirts attached, but also it would have straps. So it was usually kind of either straight across the bust or slightly rounded over the top, and that would lace up in two positions. So not the front and the back, as we might think, but actually the two sides. So kind of the side back, just behind kind of where the arm is. So that laces up on the two sides, and the straps are fitted quite tightly, and they're fitted quite off the shoulder. So when you are laced properly, it pulls the shoulders back. So you get this incredibly erect posture, which I write about in my thesis quite a bit. So my thesis was on gift exchange. And I looked at political gift exchange and how people used gifts as a language to say maybe a subtextual, to carry on a subtextual conversation in their political negotiations. And one woman that I looked at in incredible detail and depth, because she is my hero, is Elizabeth Fitzgerald, who is known to history as the Fair Geraldine, because she was the daughter of the Earl of Kildare and then the sister of the next Earl of Kildare. And after Silken Thomas, her eldest half-brother, and all of her uncles were executed for treason, she was raised at the Tudor court from about the age of 10 or so. And there she was raised in the royal nursery with the future Queens Mary I and Elizabeth I. And she ended up being best friends with Elizabeth I. And twice in her brother's career as Earl of Kildare, he was accused of treason. And I looked at the gifts that Elizabeth Fitzgerald gave to Queen Elizabeth at that time to kind of winkle out sort of, what she was saying to the Queen about her natal house, her brother's innocence, their loyalty, all that sort of thing. And one of the gifts that she gave at the 1580 New Year's gift exchange, because gifts weren't given at Christmas Day like we do nowadays, they were given on New Year's Day.
Thank you.
To the monarch. And so what I looked at was, for the entry for the 1580 New Year's gift exchange, Elizabeth Clinton, that was her married name, gave the Queen a cloth of silver kirtle that was unlined. And that kind of tweaked my little antenna there, because I was like, unlined. Now, I knew from experience how long it takes to make a kirtle, although I'd never timed it. So I devised an experiment whereby I would make two kirtles exactly the same, the exact same amount of detail and decoration on them, made from the same materials, and I would time them to the minute how long they took to make. The only difference would be the skirt of one would have a lining and an interlining, and the other one would not. And I wanted to see what sort of time difference there was in making those. So I went to Nina Michaela of the Tudor Tailor, and I spent 2 weeks there, and I handmade both cloth of silver kirtles, one lined and one unlined. And I deduced that the unlined kirtle, which was the gift after all, took 55 hours and 25 minutes to make.
Mm.
And the lined kirtle took us 60 hours and 20 minutes to make. So there was a difference of 5 hours, which doesn't sound like much to us. But if you're a tailor, and it's, 5 hours is actually a lot of sewing when you're down to the wire. Sorry, to backtrack a tiny bit, her brother was arrested on the 23rd of December and 1579. And like I said, the gifts had to be given on the 1st of January. So there was only about a week wherein the tailors could make this kirtle to give to the Queen. So I theorized that because the kirtle gave the wearer such upright posture, and upright posture was a sign of mastery over the baser human instincts. And Dr. Sarah Bendel has also written about this, about how there was much more structure in garments in the 16th and 17th century, especially in women's garments. And that structure was meant to denote their civility and also, their right.
Okay,
was an outward sign. Their upright posture was an outward sign of their civility and their nobility. So I theorized that basically what Elizabeth Clinton was saying was that, because the kirtle supports the body and because the kirtle supports the body and plays that supportive role, and it's a sign of, of physical uprightness, I said that it was also a sign of moral rectitude as well. And therefore, by giving this gift and knowing that the ladies in waiting would be dressing the Queen, I could just easily imagine Elizabeth Clinton lacing the kirtle, literally standing behind the Queen right here, lacing her into the kirtle and talking into her ear the whole time, going, my brother wouldn't do that. The Lord Deputy is really pushing the envelope here by imprisoning my brother and all this sort of thing. And not only, she didn't let the gift speak for itself. Walsingham, who's one of the Queen's advisors, he wrote to Lord Deputy Grey and he basically said, the Earl of Kildare's sister is cutting the ground out from underneath you to the Queen. She is blackguarding your name all over the place.
That's brilliant.
And then Elizabeth Clinton wrote a letter to a friend asking the friend to come stay with her husband while she went to court, because she said, it is now the right time to make speeches to the Queen in my brother of Kildare's causes. So basically, she fully admitted that, she was going to war with the Lord Deputy of Ireland to save her brother. And she did. Her brother was found clear of any treason charges and Lord Deputy Grey was recalled the next year. So that's a long tangent. But so yes, basically the kirtle is a bodice, a stiffened bodice, lacing up the two sides with these offset straps and then skirts attached. And very oftentimes the skirts were the really fancy, expensive fabric was at the front, and they used cheaper fabric at the back because that was going to be covered with a gown. So even though, this is the Queen and earls and duchesses and whatever, they're still not wasting a metre and a half or a yard and a half, I suppose, of fabric where it's not going to be seen because it was so eye-wateringly expensive.
Can imagine. It definitely is very, very fascinating. It does remind me, especially the politics that was going on, reminds me of the deep conversations we used to have when we were in University College of Cork. I have a good few questions here, and I just want to thank everybody for the feedback and the questions that are being asked. Just going back to the conversation we were having previously about corsets and stuff, when doing the enactment for the 16th century, do you have any advice or tips for anyone doing the 16th and for the Victorian era as well? This is for a reenactor who suffers from a bad back. Do you have any advice or tips for them?
I don't. I mean, you will need two different support garments for those two different periods. So unfortunately, that means either making or purchasing two different garments. Fortunately, aside from that one ping in my back in August, I don't suffer from back
Oh,
problems. I don't know if that's because I wear corsetry quite a lot of the time.
yeah.
It could be my mother has a very bad back, and touch wood, fortunately, I don't.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's because of corsetry. I would say don't lace too tight, don't lace past the point of pain, but I would say that anyway, not even if you've got a bad back or not. Um, it probably would be best if you made or commissioned uh, a corset yourself rather than trying to buy one off the rack. You're going to be able to customize something far more to your particular pain needs or whatever, than if you just buy something off the rack.
Mm.
I know it's tedious, it's a lot of making, but that kind of is the way it goes. I mean, that's kind of it, even if you don't have back problems. A customized course is one that either you make yourself or with the help of a friend who's a good sewist, or even if you go to the incredible price of commissioning somebody to do it, hopefully you're going to have a much better experience with something that's made specifically for your body. I'm
Mm.
sorry I don't have any better advice than that.
No, it's perfectly fine. And on top of that as well, the same person was asking again, is there any male corsets? I'm assuming that once again, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, sorry. I'm assuming you're talking about the 16th and the 19th century. So, Melissa, is there any male corsets for the 16th and 19th century?
Not for the 16th century, at least not in Gaelic Irish dress or
Mm.
Anglo-Irish dress. There are a kind of form of corsets for men, kind of in the Regency period in the 1830s, which is a little bit later. Um, I am not an expert on this. Dr. Hilary Davidson has written quite a few excellent books. I would recommend checking out her latest book, which is, I think, called A Guide to Regency Fashion.
Mm.
Off the top of my head, I just bought it when I was at the Jane Austen Festival in Bath in September. It wasn't like, because the Prince Regent at the time in the early 19th century was very obese and corpulent. They did kind of have sort of like, I mean, it wasn't like a full blown corset, there wasn't terrific amounts of boning in it,
Mm.
but there would be enough to kind of help provide a bit of back support, suck in the gut a bit, basically. But I've never seen any reenactor make or wear it, or if they do, I'm not going to see it because it'd be under their clothing. But Regency period is what you would be looking at. I would even just type in like Regency men's support clothing or men's corset into Google and see what you can find, but then look for sources from academic academic sources. Basically, Dr. Hilary Davidson would be
Mm.
really top notch for that.
Nice. On top of that as well, people were very, very curious about the information that you're providing there, and they would love to contact you not contact you personally, just to actually look at your work and stuff. Do you
Yeah.
have any social media pages that they can go on to and have a look at your work?
So at the moment, I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Mm.
So my Instagram is Doctor and then dot and then Melissa Shields.
Happy days.
So I could probably type that. I'm
Oh,
not sure if I could type that
I
while we're
can easily.
doing this.
It's grand. I can actually put it up
Okay.
later and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, on top of that as well, they were wondering if you could make any. I'm assuming 16th century clothing again, because the questions are on the 16th century clothing. But have you any videos up on your Instagram of you making 16th century clothing?
No, but I really want to.
Well, you have a
I
request there anyway.
really, yeah, I really want to. I have definitely thought about starting my own YouTube channel.
Mm.
I have quite a lot of writing I need to do in January and February, and that was when I was kind of planning on doing a lot of filming and then releasing a YouTube channel,
Mm.
like maybe in March with a ton of content for a back catalog. I don't know if that's going to happen now because I need to make revisions to an article for a journal submission, but
Uh,
we'll see. I've done little reels every now and again. When I, have been sewing something in my camera, my phone is kind of easy to hand, but I don't have a camera besides my phone. I would need to invest in a camera first of all, and a tripod and that sort of stuff. So, and I'm sure Philip can tell you, like, there's doing the thing and then there's filming yourself doing the thing, which takes an inordinate amount of time. And then there's editing the thing. And I'm afraid that if I go about filming stuff and starting a YouTube channel, that I'm going to have less time for actually making stuff.
yeah, there's the problem.
And yes, I'll have content. And then I might not even get monetized for quite a while. And so
Mm.
therefore, it's like, okay, I'm producing less clothing for my talks and I'm not even making money. So maybe Instagram lives are the way to go. That
Mm.
might be something to do if I could very simply set up a tripod.
Yeah.
Philip, I mean, you might be able to advise me on
Oh,
that if
big
that's a
time.
better way to do it.
In fact, it is an amazing time for you to jump on now because you can jump on with myself and Rachel's multi-streams. But we'll talk about that later because as you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
there,
yeah.
my brain is suddenly like, actually, I can boom up your channel very quickly right now because actually, clothing, especially medieval, funny enough, the Middle Ages between the period of King John. King John suddenly just got really, really popular. So the period
Okay.
from King John has gotten super popular up to around the fall of Constantinople. I haven't heard anyone, funny enough, Tudor clothing isn't too popular right now, but it's mostly from the 15th, well, actually, around the Wars of the Roses. So from the Wars of the Roses
Yeah,
down to King John, right now this week is probably the biggest for the algorithm and stuff. So if you were to
of
jump on now
course.
and do that, but you know yourself, the algorithm could easily change tomorrow.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I
also,
find these things tend to go in fashions. Like when Outlander came out, when
oh
Bridgerton came
yeah,
out, like
yeah,
there was a huge surge of, Georgian clothing and then Regency clothing. So I find whatever kind of popular media is on at the time, like there's probably a huge resurgence in, let's say, 15th century clothing when, Game of Thrones came out and that sort of thing. So yeah, who knows where the next wave is coming to ride. So
that's it exactly. But yeah, if you ever wanted to jump on and do the live streams and everything, you're more than welcome to jump on with the rest of us.
great.
I
Thanks.
can't say like when it comes down to making money and stuff, if you're well organized and this is for everyone in the comment section as well, you're more than welcome to jump on as well. But if you are jumping in there, it's more or less trying to jump in there with the right advertisers rather than
Mm,
and your own personal advertisers rather than being dependent on the ad revenue for YouTube because it's very cranky, very, very cranky over there. And you'll often, if you spend long enough on my channel and stuff, you've often probably seen me crash out at the YouTube advertisers because of the fact that they can be very unorganized compared to TikTok and Instagram. The problem with Instagram and TikTok, and not just for Mr. Shields, but also for people in the comment section as well, is they tend to have their own agendas and stuff, their own end goals, which can clash compared to YouTube. YouTube seems to just, um, although people have bitched about YouTube in the past, I haven't seen any of them have any type of agendas that TikTok and Instagram would have. But anyway, regardless, when it comes down to, I'm just trying to see what the comment section. Apologize about this. Just seeing what the comment section are talking about because it's mostly revolving around medical corsets
mhm.
used while people use back issues. Um, yeah, you don't really, as you said there, you don't really specialize in corsets to specialize in on the back. I'm assuming the conversation is mostly focused around the 19th century and stuff, and that's definitely
Mhm.
well out of my field of expertise. My field of expertise is mostly the medieval period. So most of the stuff, the conversation that people are having on the 19th century, way out of my field of expertise. So I do apologize for being uneducated about that. And Melissa, you don't specialize in medical corsets as well, do you?
No,
Mm.
I mean, I have one Victorian corset that I wear for my talks. I actually have the pattern. for another one, to replace the one that I've got, because I purchased it in 2013 and it could really do with just being retired now at this stage. But I started making a mock-up for it, I think about a year and a half ago, and then I frantically needed something else for some other talk that got kind of, oh my God, can you do a talk on XYZ? I'm like, sure, but I need to make a different gown. So that's been pushed to the side. And it's looking like next year is going to be all Regency up until September, maybe a tiny bit of Elizabethan, but we'll see. It's so funny because I was saying to a friend of mine recently, like, I feel like my Regency wardrobe is really complete. I don't need to make any more Regency clothing. I've enough for 2-3 weeks, that like if I went someplace, like when I went to Bath, I could change my clothes twice a day and I'd have a new thing to wear all the time. And suddenly I'm like, with some opportunities that I have next year, I'm like, oh shoot, no, I actually do need to make some more Regency stuff. So that's going to be my primary focus. But no, medical corsets, thankfully, I haven't needed them myself. So I haven't gone into that rabbit hole because it hasn't been something I've needed.
And I'd love, I do thank everybody for being very polite this morning, everything, and the questions are absolutely amazing. One of the problems we do face, and the comment section has brought it up as well, is when it comes down to the 16th century in Ireland, there can be a lack of evidence to work with. When it comes down to constructing outfits for 16th century Ireland, where do you go to for sources?
So I've gone to the National Museum. In 2012, I was allowed into the National Museum on one of their research days, and they opened up the case, and I physically handled the Shinrone gown myself. And let me tell you, there is some bang of peat or like, peat smoke off of it. It smells like you're burning a turf fire when you open up the case. So like I've lifted up the underside of the skirt and looked at all the seams and took measurements and that sort of thing. They also let me go down into the basement where they had the Moy gown laid out on a table, and I got to handle that as well. So like, fortunately, like, living in Ireland and having the sheer neck to go and ask people, like, I have physically gone to the sources. Now, an extant is not the be all and end all. Yes, of course, it is a great resource, but it is just one garment. And every single garment at this time in history was made by hand, and so therefore was in some way individual. So while the Shinrone gown tells us about itself, it does not necessarily tell us about every single gown produced in 16th century Ireland at that time, even if they were the similar style. Other gowns might have had, so like for instance, in the skirt of the Shinrone gown, each of the panels has these quills in them that have been stitched into them with a very large running stitch. And basically, like, there was 2 quills worked into each panel, and then a quill adjoining each panel to each other. But there might have been gowns that only had 1 quill, or that had 3 quills worked into it. We've just got that one. Now this is where we also compare the extant with the written and the visual or pictorial depictions at the time. You need to have the whole spectrum, like, in connection. Is brilliant, because in 1620 then we have a visitor to Ireland, I believe it was Foynes Morrison, who provides us a written description of the gown, and he describes the Shinrone gown like perfectly. And he describes that the space in between those quills was like 3 fingers wide. And like, when I opened up when they opened the cabinet for me in the National Museum, like, yeah, I could put my fingers there. There's 3 fingers wide, So it's really important to look at all the sources. Now, sometimes, like in Ireland, we have a bit of controversy, I should say, over some of our pictorial sources. And you have to bear in mind that both our written sources and our pictorial sources almost always, and in Ireland ubiquitously, come from foreigners. They come from the English usually, but there are French and Spanish writings and images as well. And you have to remember their motivation for writing this down or for drawing this. Is it to, mock or deride, or is it to hold up and elevate? What is their motivation for creating this picture or this text? So the writing of Foynes Morrison, like, he thinks that the headgear that the women wear is ugly. I mean, that's his personal opinion. So, like, that's fine. You can think whatever you like. Whereas we do have some sort of controversy over the pictorial images. So Lucas de Heer, in reenactment circles, has long been said to be an unreliable source because he never visited Ireland himself, and therefore his information was secondhand at best. But I did a little bit of digging. So Lucas de Heer, no, that is true. He did not ever come to Ireland himself. He was in England. He was at the court from 1567 to 1577. And while he was there, his patron was Edward Clinton, Earl of Lincoln. And who was Edward Clinton, Earl of Lincoln, married to? Elizabeth Fitzgerald. So her brother was the Earl of Kildare. Her younger brother was Lord Edward Fitzgerald. And the two of them frequently travelled back and forth between England and Ireland. And I actually combed through their journeys back and forth when they were in Ireland, when they were in England, when, hopping back and forth. And I discovered like two pretty long periods of time of about 2.5 years each of when the Earl of Kildare or his younger brother were at court at the same time as Lucas de Heer. And Edward Clinton, the Earl of Lincoln, he had Lucas de Heer paint a mural all along the top of the walls of his dining room of all the different clothing of the people groups of the world. And there was no way the Earl of Lincoln, the Lord High Admiral, was going to have his wife and his brother-in-laws and anybody else disrespected by showing inaccurate Irish clothing of their homeland. So I believe de Heer's depictions are very accurate because they would have been described to him by people who were extremely familiar with it. And there were also Irish people in London, quite a lot of them. There was messengers going back and forth constantly, like when the Earl of Desmond was basically taken prisoner to court. He had a huge retinue of about 24 people with him. There was frequently masks being performed at the court in Irish dress. So like there was quite a visual knowledge of Irish dress. So I think we can safely trust them. So again, I'm sorry if I went on a tangent, but that's basically
it
to say
fits
the
into
sources.
the questions people are asking. Keep going, yeah.
So like the sources that we have for 16th century Ireland aren't, we don't have a plethora of them, but what we have is actually pretty good. Again, as long as you bear in mind the source of who is creating, perhaps a critique. I find people rarely, in history, I'm often asked in my talks, why did the Irish like to wear the hanging sleeve? Or why did they like to dye their lena, this fluorescent yellow color? And what I often tell people is that people rarely write down why they like something, but people are really quick to write down something they don't like. And especially if it's something they don't like about somebody else, how many people, you go to a restaurant and you had a great time and you don't bother writing a review, but if you had a bad time, you hop on there, you're on TripAdvisor or whatever, telling the whole world about, your cold soup and your whatever. So, so that's kind of the sources that we've got. I did send them to Phil, and we will have to just do another live to show those.
Because it literally is fitting in with the questions as well. So it is a pity that I can't switch between the two. It is very frustrating. But Will be, because what you've hit on is something that Rachel was talking about before as well, and it was hitting a note as well, is the interpretation. Because even in the 15th century, we have people from Spain going over to the courts of the O'Neills and stuff and giving an interpretation of that. So it's something we
Mm-hmm.
need to definitely dive deeper into. Heading back over to the comments section there, we talked about De Heer. De Heer he's considered a German man of that period, if I'm not mistaken. The comment section is asking, is there any German writings that go with his work, or any German writing as a whole, that talk about Ireland in the 16th century alone?
Yes.
Okay.
So the kind of famous image that we have
Mm.
is from a costume book that De Heer produced after returning to the Netherlands, I believe, after his time at court. So there is a paragraph attached to that's opposite the drawing.
Mm.
And in it, he writes about, oh yeah, Dublin's really nice. There's civilized people there. And then he goes on to basically say that if, oh God, I hope I don't misquote this now. And I can't turn on my laptop. He basically makes a hint about savagery, the savagery of the Gaelic Irish, but he doesn't say why.
Mm.
So if you're looking at the clothing that he's drawn and the words savage, if you like bear those and the relationship between those two, he's basically obviously saying that, like, look at their unstructured, loose clothing, and the one of the guys at least is barefoot, and they have the coulon with the shaved head and the fringe going over their faces like that. So it's like the illustration is backing up his declaration that they're savage without having to provide further details. So it's not like he was like, do you remember when we did Celtic Civ together? I think it was Pomponius Mela who said, like, back in the Greek or Roman times, that the Irish eat their dead, and the sons have relations with the mother at the father's funeral and all this sort of stuff. Lucas De Heer didn't go into any of that sort of detail. It's just literally the image and just like the word savage. So, but he's like, oh yeah, Dublin is civilized and all this sort of thing. But yeah, you get beyond that and it's the wild Irish. Maybe he didn't use the word savage. He might have used the word wild, which was pretty much the same thing. So.
Okay. Yeah. In the comment section, it's perfectly fine if you have no knowledge on Irish Irish history, especially medieval history, or to do with the 16th century. And it's okay to have no information. You ask away in the comment section. I don't mind answering any questions whatsoever, even if you think it's silly questions and stuff. Someone's asking in the comment section, who are when in the literature to do with Ireland, who are the foreigners, which I also think is quite interesting as well. When reading the literature and stuff, from an Irish perspective, a Gaelic perspective, when they say they are the foreigners, who are they talking about? And I do find it interesting as well, and there was another comment as well. Are the Desmond Fitzgeralds considered foreigners? Which I do find interesting as well, because I have seen the word Gaul, foreign, applied towards the likes of the Butlers and the Fitzgeralds before. When you've gone through the writings and stuff in the 16th century, have you come across writings that were referred to the Desmond Fitzgeralds as foreigner? And what does that word foreigner mean from a Gaelic interpretation, or at least your interpretation? Because even me, I'm like, like, what does that actually mean? Like, I know that starts up a whole load of conversations and stuff.
I mean, I would not be the academic to answer what does the word foreigner mean, as Gaeilge. I feel like that's, a topic for people who have been in the game much longer than I am, and who speak Irish, and who have been researching that for entire careers. I'll just answer for the 16th century. So I've looked in, the annals of the Four Masters. I've looked at the annals of Ulster when I'm looking for things. obviously I'm reading in translation. I'm not
Mm.
reading it Oscuelga. So I don't want to be splitting hairs or making stuff up. But I'll just say that what I've seen the phrase the English of Ireland
Ah.
to describe people, like basically like the Anglo-Irish,
Mm.
to describe, the men of Dublin or whatever. Like I've seen that phrase, the English of Ireland. So there's a tiny bit of the writer distancing these people, but also acknowledging them to be of Ireland because they've been in Ireland like 400 years at that stage. As regards the Desmond Fitzgeralds, I personally have not come across any um, writings, like Gaelic Irish writings, that call them, Gaul, that call them foreigner.
Mm.
They would just be, the Earl of Desmond, um, because I think he was such a huge figure in that regard. I think they were easily the most Gaelicized of all the Irish earls.
Mm.
Except for, like, obviously Count Bacach O'Neill in the 1540s, who was Gaelic and who was made an English earl as a way for Henry to be able to sleep at night and not be afraid of an invasion when he was preparing to invade France himself. The Gaelic, the Earls of Desmond, they had pretty much from the start, from like first settling in Desmond or in Munster, they pretty much from the start married the daughters of Irish lords,
Mm.
usually the O'Briens. What was very, very common for them to marry whatever daughter of whatever O'Brien lord was there in power. So we find that, basically, like, they were heavily Gaelicized because almost immediately, like, they're marrying Irish women, so their
Mm.
children are learning Irish. They're the first to patronize Irish poets like Garrod Dearla, and who, he then wrote in Irish in the 13th century or very early 14th century.
Mm.
Don't quote me on that. So, and they adopted Irish dress very quickly, to such an extent that by the time of the 1530s and 1540s, the Earls of Desmond no longer spoke English.
Okay.
They had to have translators there when they made their submission to the Lord Deputy and when they went to court and made their submission to Henry VIII. They exclusively wore Irish dress, and Lord Deputy Anthony St. Leger had to give the Earl of Desmond a whole bunch of clothes, and then paraded him around like Kilmallock and Limerick and all those places, showing him off as a sign of his submission to the crown. They entirely embraced Gaelic warfare and the practice of coin and livery, which was having a standing army that they billeted on their tenants, as part of the tenants' rent. And that's how they could keep a standing army, because essentially they were making their tenants feed and even pay the soldiers themselves. So they wholeheartedly adopted Gaelic customs pretty quickly. So that by the 16th century, like, they were like, is there any English blood in these guys at all, or what? Because their cultural signs, their cultural what's the word? Their outward cultural expressions were so Gaelic. There was just, like, basically nothing English left in them.
Yeah, it's very strange actually talking about this to people who are outside of England and Ireland, who have no idea about English and Irish history whatsoever, because the comment section is like, okay, so what does this mean and what does that mean? And I'm like, looking at the comments going, God, that's an essay and a half to try to explain. Our history is so strange. And it was Dr. Owen O'Neill. We were having a conversation one day. We were talking about the immigration of the Desmond Fitzgeralds to Ireland in the Norman period, which is 1169. So the Normans, which are a bunch of Cambro Normans, they were Welsh French people, referred to in the literature as the Knights of the Welsh Marches, who immigrate to Ireland in 1169, who technically speaking, should have been under the English crown because of their original connections to the English crown going back to 1066. So Henry II felt he should go over to Ireland and kind of keep them on a leash. And so they were kind of, it ends up in this weird kind of dynamic where they were meant to be English, but at the same time, they were very, very quickly becoming Irish. So by the time we get up to 1366, there's laws trying to make them English, although they were never English
Yeah,
to start with.
statutes of Kilkenny.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is because people, and I think we see this nowadays, people have a lot of anxiety around who are you, where are you from, how are you different to me, how are you the same for me.
mm,
And speaking as a dress historian, like the easiest way, conceptually, theoretically, the easiest way to tell who somebody is, where they fit in the social pecking order, what gender they are, what their occupation is by not their language, but by their clothing. Like it is literally a message board that the thought at the time was it should telegraph wordlessly exactly where you are in the hierarchy. Um, you know, at all times, that sort of thing. Are you married? Are you a widow? Are you a baker? Are you a priest? You know, it's your clothing. It's your clothing that tells people this. So like when you bring up the statutes of Kilkenny in 1366 and later on the Parliament of Trim 100 years later, and then later on 100 years after that, Henry VIII, you know, again banning saffron and this and that, the other, like it was an attempt to quell their anxieties about who these people are. How do we know who's who? How do we know who's friend, who's foe? And they even give this rationale. I believe in the Parliament of Trim, you know, they say that, well, an Englishman, if he's dressed in Irish clothing, he might be taken for a rebel and he might be slain. And then we're going to have a lawsuit on our hands because he was actually an Englishman. And you can't just go slaying an Englishman, sort of thing. So that's one attempt. You have to understand that the social theory, the mindset at the time, we use clothing nowadays to express our personality. A lot of us. They used clothing back then to express their place in the pecking order, where they stood in the world, their gender, their religion, their marital status, all of that. But the mindset at this time, and going back quite a bit earlier than this as well, was that not only should your clothing express who you are, your intersecting identities, but clothing also impressed and molded characteristics on the wearer. So if you were an Englishman and you were wearing Spanish clothing, you wore a lot of Spanish fashions, they were actually afraid that wearing Spanish styles or Irish styles or French styles would basically make you disloyal to your own nationality, to your own monarch, because like this clothing would make you too Frenchified or too, you know, too Irish or whatever. So clothing was very much a molding, like a tool of molding is what they, you know, not just to keep you warm or dry or whatever, but it was meant to shape your character. So like, for instance, in the 16th century, as women's clothing in particular, but also men's clothing got stiffer and more structured and like with more corsetry in it and that sort of thing, like, you know, this was thought to mold and shape the body, but also to mold and shape the character. So yeah, and there was plenty of edicts passed all the time about not wearing foreign fashions, not just because if you bought, say, a load of French silk, you're doing English silk weavers out of money, but because it might make you too sympathetic to the French, basically.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, literally, I could bitch about that all day. Sadly, and I do apologize for this because we got some amazing questions coming in the comment section, but sadly, Melissa has to get going because she has tons and tons of works and projects coming up. We've got about 3 minutes
I
left.
could go for a little while
A
longer
little bit
if you
longer.
want.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
the
we could take
ratings.
another couple.
The ratings are absolutely amazing right now. I could literally keep you on all night. It's a pity that you have to go because, especially when we were talking about Anglo-Irish, the ratings went through the roof. However, We have a few questions on the Scottish influence into Irish clothing. I do have to highlight the fact that Scottish, because some of you guys are asking about the Scottish court and stuff, and it's actually sadly out of my field of expertise. The Scottish court, wow, that's a humongous topic in itself. Melissa, are you aware of any Scottish influence into Irish clothing in the 16th century? Are you aware of any of it, or are you like
I
myself?
wouldn't I wouldn't say that I noticed Scottish influence in clothing
Mm,
in 16th century Ireland, because I believe that the Scots and the Irish, pretty much in the Gaelic areas, wore the same thing. I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the Scots also wore the lena, they wore a broth, which is the cloak. I don't know if they wore an honour. I have not had time to go looking at Scottish 16th century Gaelic clothing. There's enough of my own stuff to be doing. I mean, it sounds like a fun little rabbit hole.
mm,
But I believe because the Irish and the Scots shared a common language, they shared a common culture, they practiced a lot of the same cultural practices. There was a heavy emphasis on like honor price, and cattle was the main currency between them. Like I believe, and I'm very probably wrong, the clothing was probably the same, and I wouldn't be able to say who influenced who. Um, I mean, you could have a party of Scots, or some 3,000 Scots mercenaries who've been hired by an Irish lord to be his private mercenaries. And if they come over wearing something different and the local Irish see it, it's not been documented in written form. So it's hard to say who came up with maybe a change in fashion and who adopted it and who adapted it, this sort of thing. Unfortunately, without some heavy digging and possibly both an in-depth knowledge of both Irish Gaelic and Scots Gaelic, that's a topic for another researcher, I'm afraid.
hi.
I don't think my academic career will be built on that. But I would just say that like there was quite a lot of contact. Ireland was not this rural backwater, completely isolated from the rest of Europe
Mm,
that we were led to believe. There was Spanish and French fishing vessels off the coast of Ireland in their hundreds and thousands. Like Shane O'Neill, the would-be Earl of Tyrone in Ulster. Like, I read one account where it said some French fishermen were questioned and they called him, the Prince of Tyrone. So like if French fishermen are knowing who Shane O'Neill is, and Manus O'Donnell, another Irish lord in the 1530s and 1540s, like he met the Lord Deputy at a meeting dressed. I mean, the Lord Deputy described his rig out in incredible detail for a whole paragraph about his red crimson satin this and how many pairs of gold eaglets he had on his hat and all this sort of things. So like, and he was called the King of Fish. So like, because basically Scottish and French fishing vessels would be like they do nowadays, fishing off the coast of Ireland, are incredibly rich fisheries, and they would take it on land to process, and O'Donnell would effectively sell them the fish and they would give him wine in exchange. So Ireland actually had quite a lot of European contact. So it's not surprising if foreign fashions were seen and then interpreted differently in Ireland than perhaps they were to continental sources. But, you know, people see stuff and they like it and they try to recreate it. Ask any cosplayer out there.
hi, for sure.
So,
It's a pity I can't have you going on all night because you're bringing in a whole load of ad revenue for me, especially when we were talking about Anglo-Irish history for sure. So we'll definitely have to get you back on so I can make more money
okay.
from you for sure. And hopefully next time we can have Rachel from the Creative Contessa on as well so she can poke and prod you as well, especially from a much more clothing expert perspective. So I do apologize because my field is more or less, Irish medieval history
Yeah.
rather than clothing itself. So it'd be great next time to get Rachel on, hopefully for a weekend. I know that's where Rachel is mostly looking
Yeah.
to aim to go for, and it might be easier for us all overall to get that done. The questions questions. Absolutely amazing. You guys are still flooding in with the questions and stuff. Please take note of it for next time, and we'll try to organize something for you guys. Rachel, is there any way, if people are looking to send you money to support your work, do you have any form of a buy me a coffee, or is it just on Instagram for the time being? You're mostly okay.
I'm just on Instagram. I mean, I have PayPal. I don't know.
Oh, that's grand.
I don't know.
So if you're looking to support Melissa's work, please head over to her channel. It's Dr. Melissa Shields. I don't think you have it. You just have Melissa Shields for the time being, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Doctor and then dot Melissa Shields.
Happy
for
days.
My Instagram account.
So definitely, if you're looking to support Melissa Shields' work, definitely head over to her Instagram and check that out. You do have plans on making more clothing from the 16th century. I think that's what the comment section is definitely demanding anyway. So we'll see what you can do over time for sure.
Yeah, I need to make a couple of leinta for my husband. He was going to go to the Battle of Tewkesbury this year. Now, he didn't end up going, but I need to make those so he's got something to wear. I wove him a broth, a shaggy mantle, one of those Irish cloaks, many years ago, back in 2009. So yeah, there's always more stuff to do. I need to not necessarily make new 16th century clothing, but I need to update an old gown that I feel I kind of cheated, and I put on some of the decoration, which took ages. I sewed on 350 pearls, and then I really should probably sew on probably about another 100. So I feel like kind of blinging that up a bit more is something I need to be doing. So yeah. So yeah, there's always stuff to do. There's always adjustments and improvements to make. And much like Queen Elizabeth, I have to have my garments enlarged because they've shrunk, not during the last 5 years, but it's just life has happened. So it's very funny just to say that we kind of know when Queen Elizabeth had a bit of a weight gain because her tailor kept getting warrants to enlarge certain of her, what must have been her favorite dresses, if she was having him go to all that work and do it. So people, even the Queen of England, repurposed her clothing and had it made larger when it got a bit too small in opposition to our fast fashion times that we live in now. So
that's absolutely terrific. And I was just, as you were talking away there, just in the background, just posting those links up to both Rachel's channel and, oh yeah, you're more than welcome, guys. I posted that over to my channel and over to Creative Contessa's channel. So thank you so much, guys, for going over to Melissa's channel and checking that out. Melissa, I'd absolutely love to have you back on. And it's a pity I can't have you back on for another 2 or 3 hours, definitely for the viewership, because especially when you were talking about Anglo-Irish history and stuff, it was definitely popping down. So we'll definitely bring you back on to talk about especially Anglo-Irish clothing next time, especially to do with the Fitzgeralds and stuff. Other than that, guys, thank you so much, Melissa. And
quick question. Would people like to see me dressed up in 16th century Irish clothing? Give me a preference. Would you prefer the Shinrone gown, or do you want Elizabethan courtly attire? So fight amongst yourselves in the comments.
Definitely get it in there. I would say the comment section would push more on the side of, and I don't want to hurt the feelings of all the Irish in the comment section. It's just, we have a lot of Elizabethan Ren Fair fans in the comment section today because of coming over from Rachel's side. So I assume overall people would end up going for the but that's why you guys need to go and fight in the comment section, push for that Irish. No, dress up in Japanese. Well, that's more of my wife's spot.
Yeah. That's Yuki. We're allowed to.
Oh, and the Korean side is more Rachel, because Rachel is actually over in Korea right now. So
Oh,
The
cool.
Korean side is actually more of Rachel's perspective. Rachel actually has Korean dresses and stuff out, so
A
definitely check
hanbok,
out.
is it?
Yeah, she has all that stuff up on her Instagram and her YouTube channel. So if you want Korean dresses, definitely head over to over to Rachel's one. Japanese dress, oh, it'd have to be insanely nice to my wife. I think she'd still tell me to go my own business. Oh no, section's pushing for the Irish one. Funny enough, I thought Rachel's
Okay.
side would be pushing for the Elizabethan one, but we can always do multiple streams anyway. It's all good for my ad stream. So,
True, true, true. Yeah.
so it looks like we'll be pushing for the Irish one for next time. Anyway, thank you so much. Oh, okay, okay, guys. Talk all night. Regardless,
Okay.
and thank you so much, guys. And other than that, guys, thank you so much, and slán go bhfuil. Bye.